The fluorescent lights of the 42nd floor cast their harsh glow across the marble corridors of Blackstone Industries. Sophia Chen pressed her back against the cold bathroom door, her breathing shallow and rapid. The designer handbag she carried, a cheap imitation bought from a street vendor, trembled in her grip as tears threatened to spill from her dark eyes. 26 years old, with long black hair that she kept in a professional bun and wearing a navy blazer that had seen better days, Sophia represented the dreams of countless young people who came to the city with nothing but ambition. She had graduated summa cum laude from State University with a degree in finance, worked 3 jobs to pay for school, and landed what she thought was her dream position at one of the most prestigious corporations in the country. But dreams, she was learning, often came with a price she hadn't anticipated. The day had started like any other. Sophia arrived at the office at 7 in the morning, 2 hours before her official start time, to review the quarterly reports she had been working on for weeks. She prided herself on being thorough, on catching details that others missed, on being indispensable through sheer competence and dedication. Richard Morrison, her department manager, had other plans. Chen, his voice had cut through the morning quiet like a blade. Richard was a man in his 50s with thinning hair and a permanent scowl that seemed etched into his features. He had been with the company for 15 years and carried himself with the arrogance of someone who believed his tenure made him untouchable. "Yes, Mr. Morrison." Sophia had looked up from her computer, where spreadsheets filled with data she had been analyzing for days glowed on the screen. "The presentation you've been working on? Scrap it. The CEO wants a completely different approach. Instead of quarterly analysis, he wants a 5-year projection with market volatility assessments and competitor analysis, when he wants it in 3 hours." Sophia had felt the blood drain from her face. 3 hours? "Mr. Morrison, that kind of analysis typically takes weeks to complete properly. The data alone, are you telling me you can't handle it?" Richard had leaned over her desk, his coffee breath making her recoil slightly. "Because if you can't, I'm sure there are plenty of other qualified candidates who would love to have your position." The threat hung in the air like poison. Sophia knew that Richard had never liked her. From her first day, he had made it clear that he believed she was only hired to meet diversity quotas. Despite her stellar academic record and glowing recommendations, every assignment he gave her seemed designed to make her fail. Every deadline, unnecessarily tight. Every expectation, unreasonably high. But Sophia had persevered, working longer hours than anyone else, producing work that was flawless, proving herself again and again. She had to. Her family was counting on her. Her parents ran a small restaurant in their hometown, struggling to make ends meet. Her younger brother was in his senior year of high school, dreaming of college but knowing the family couldn't afford it without Sophia's help. Every paycheck she sent home was a lifeline. Every promotion a step closer to the financial security her family had never known. So she had nodded, swallowed her pride, and gotten to work. The impossible task, the next 3 hours, were a blur of frantic research, rapid calculations, and growing desperation. Sophia pulled data from databases, constructed models, and tried to create something resembling a comprehensive analysis in a time frame that would have challenged a team of analysts working together. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, her eyes burning from staring at the screen. Around her, the office filled with the usual sounds of corporate life phones ringing, printers humming, the soft chatter of colleagues discussing their weekend plans. But Sophia was isolated in her bubble of stress and concentration. Victoria Hayes, her cubicle neighbor, and one of the few people in the office who had shown her genuine kindness, stopped by her desk around noon. "Sophia, honey, you look terrible. When's the last time you ate something?" Victoria was in her early 30s, with warm brown eyes and a maternal instinct that made her naturally protective of younger colleagues. She had been with the company for 8 years and had witnessed enough workplace politics to recognize injustice when she saw it. "I can't stop now," Sophia had replied without looking up from her screen. "Richard wants this presentation in an hour, and I'm nowhere near finished." Victoria had frowned, glancing at the mountain of papers and open applications on Sophia's computer. "This looks like a month's worth of work. What's he trying to do to you?" But Sophia couldn't answer. She was too focused on the impossible task before her, too aware of the ticking clock and the consequences of failure. When the deadline arrived, Sophia had managed to compile something that resembled the requested analysis, but she knew it was inadequate. The research was surface level. The projections were based on limited data. The competitor analysis was cursory at best. It was the best she could do under the circumstances, but it wasn't good enough. Not for a presentation to the CEO of Blackstone Industries. The humiliation in the boardroom on the 45th floor was designed to intimidate. The two-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline. While the massive mahogany table could seat 20 people comfortably, oil paintings of the company's founding family adorned the walls, their stern faces seeming to judge everyone who entered. Sophia had been in this room only once before, during her orientation. Now, as she connected her laptop to the presentation system with trembling fingers, she felt utterly out of place among the senior executives in their expensive suits and confident demeanors. Richard had introduced her with false enthusiasm. Gentlemen, Sophia Chen will be presenting our quarterly analysis and 5-year projections. Sophia had begun her presentation with a voice that started strong, but grew weaker as she progressed through slides she knew were insufficient. The executives asked probing questions she couldn't answer adequately, pointed out gaps in her analysis that she was painfully aware of, and exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their assessment of her competence. But it was the CEO's reaction that had truly crushed her. David Blackstone sat at the head of the table, figure of quiet authority that commanded attention without effort. At 34, he was younger than most of the executives around him, but his presence filled the room. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his charcoal suit impeccably tailored, and his green eyes missed nothing. When Sophia finished her presentation, the silence that followed felt like an eternity. David had looked at her with an expression she couldn't read, then simply said, "Thank you, Miss Chen. That will be all." The dismissal was polite but final. Sophia had gathered her materials and left the room under the pitying gazes of the executives. Knowing she had failed spectacularly in front of the most important people in the company, the breaking point, Richard had been waiting for her outside the boardroom, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Congratulations, Chen. You just made our entire department look incompetent in front of the CEO. I hope you're proud of yourself." "Mr. Morrison, I did the best I could with the time. Your best wasn't good enough, was it? Maybe it's time you considered whether you're really cut out for this level of work." The words hit Sophia like physical blows. She had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, and it still wasn't enough. The unfairness of it, all the impossible deadline, the lack of support. The constant undermining suddenly overwhelmed her. She had managed to walk calmly back to her desk, pack her things with steady hands, and make it to the bathroom before the tears came. But once they started, she couldn't stop them. Sitting on the cold tile floor of the executive bathroom, Sophia let herself feel the full weight of her despair. She thought about calling her parents, about admitting that she was failing, that their faith in her had been misplaced. She thought about her brother's college applications, about the medical bills her father was struggling to pay, about all the ways her failure would ripple through her family's life. The sobs came harder now, echoing off the marble walls and expensive fixtures. This bathroom probably cost more than her parents made in a year. A cruel reminder of the world she was trying to break into but might never belong to. An unexpected encounter the soft knock on the bathroom door made. Sophia froze. She held her breath, hoping whoever it was would go away. But then a voice spoke, a voice she recognized but never expected to hear in this context. "Excuse me? Is everything all right in there?" It was David Blackstone. The CEO was standing outside the women's bathroom, asking if she was okay. Sophia's mind raced. This was mortifying beyond anything she could have imagined. First, she had humiliated herself in the boardroom, and now the CEO had found her crying. In the bathroom like a child? "I'm fine," she managed to say, her voice betraying the obvious lie. "Thank you for asking." There was a pause. Then David's voice came again, softer this time. "Miss Chen, I know this is unconventional, but would you mind if we talked? I promise I have good reasons for asking." Sophia wiped her eyes with toilet paper and tried to compose herself. She couldn't hide in here forever, and facing David now couldn't possibly make things worse than they already were. She opened the door to find David standing a respectful distance away, his expression concerned rather than judgmental. He had loosened his tie and unbuttoned his suit jacket, making him look more approachable than the intimidating figure she had seen in the boardroom. "I'm sorry," Sophia began, but David held up a hand to stop her. "You have nothing to apologize for. May I come in? I know it's inappropriate, but I'd like to speak privately. This seems to be the only place in the building where we won't be interrupted." Confused but curious, Sophia nodded and stepped aside. David entered the bathroom and closed the door behind him, then leaned against it as if to ensure their privacy. "The truth revealed, Ms. Chen. What happened in that boardroom today wasn't your fault," David said, his voice carrying a conviction that surprised Sophia. She looked at him in shock. "But the presentation was terrible. I couldn't answer your questions properly." "The analysis was superficial because you were given an impossible task," David interrupted. "I've been watching the dynamics in your department for some time. I know Morrison's methods, and I know what he did to you today." Sophia felt a spark of hope, quickly followed by skepticism. David nodded, moving to lean against the marble counter. "I asked for that presentation 3 weeks ago. Morrison was supposed to assign it to his team with adequate time for proper research and analysis. Instead, he sat on it and dumped it on you this morning." The revelation hit Sophia like a thunderbolt. "But why would he do that? Because he wants you to fail," David said simply. "Morrison has a problem with anyone he perceives as a threat to his little kingdom, and your competence threatens him. I've been watching your work, Ms. Chen. Your regular reports are exceptional. Your attention to detail is remarkable. Today's presentation was sabotage, not incompetence." Sophia felt tears threatening again, but this time they were tears of relief and validation. "I thought I was losing my mind. Thought maybe I really wasn't good enough for this job." "You're more than good enough," David said, his green eyes meeting hers with intensity. "In fact, I have a proposition for you." A new beginning, David moved closer, his presence both commanding and comforting. "I want to offer you a position working directly with me. No more Morrison, no more sabotage, no more impossible deadlines designed to make you fail." Sophia's heart raced. "Working with you? But I'm just a junior analyst." "You're brilliant," David corrected. "I've read every report you've written. Your insights are sharp, your analysis is thorough, and your projections have been more accurate than those of analysts with twice your experience. I need someone like you on my team." The offer seemed too good to be true, but the sincerity in David's voice was unmistakable. "Why are you doing this for me?" David was quiet for a moment, seeming to wrestle with his answer. When he spoke, his voice was softer, more personal. "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated. I know what it's like to work twice as hard as everyone else just to prove you belong. When I took over this company from my father, half the board thought I was too young, too inexperienced. I had to fight for every bit of respect I earned." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "And because when I saw you in that boardroom today, I saw something in your eyes that I recognized. Determination, intelligence, the refusal to give up, even when everything seemed stacked against you." Sophia felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with professional opportunity and everything to do with the way David was looking at her. There was something in his gaze that went beyond employer and employee, something that made her pulse quicken. "But won't people talk?" she asked. "Won't they say I'm getting special treatment?" David's expression hardened slightly. "Let them talk. I make the decisions in this company based on merit and results. So anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." The protection in his voice, the way he spoke as if he would shield her from any criticism or doubt, sent a thrill through Sophia that she tried to suppress. This was her boss, the CEO of the company. These feelings were inappropriate, dangerous even. But as she looked into his green eyes, she saw something that mirrored her own confused emotions. There was attraction there, carefully controlled, but unmistakably present. "I accept," she said, her voice steady, despite the chaos in her mind. "Thank you for believing in me." David smiled, and the transformation of his face was remarkable. The stern CEO disappeared, replaced by a man who looked younger, warmer, more human. "The pleasure is mine, Sophia. I have a feeling this is going to be the beginning of something extraordinary." As they stood there in that marble bathroom, surrounded by luxury that represented everything Sophia had dreamed of achieving, she felt as if her life was splitting in two before and after. Before this moment, she had been struggling, fighting, barely surviving in a world that seemed designed to crush her. After this moment, she would be something else entirely. David Blackstone's protege, his trusted analyst, his what? The question hung between them, unspoken but electric with possibility. Should we go? David asked, gesturing toward the door. Yes, Sophia replied, but neither of them moved immediately. They stood there for another heartbeat, drinking in this moment of transformation. Of connection, of the promise of something that neither could yet name, but both could feel building between them. When they finally left the bathroom together, Sophia knew that nothing would ever be the same. The girl who had entered that bathroom in tears was gone, replaced by a woman who was about to discover just how high she could soar when someone truly believed in her potential. And as David held the door open for her, his hand briefly touching her lower back in a gesture that was both protective and intimate, Sophia realized that this new beginning might lead to places she had never dared to dream about. The executive floor felt different when Sophia stepped off the elevator Monday morning. Gone were the cramped cubicles and fluorescent lighting of her old apartment. Here, floor-to-ceiling windows bathed everything in natural light, and the air itself seemed to carry the scent of success and possibility. David had arranged for her to have an office adjacent to his, separated only by a glass wall that could be made opaque with the touch of a button. The space was 3 times larger than her old cubicle, with a view of the city that took her breath away each morning. Are you settling in? Victoria had visited on her second day, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression of barely contained excitement. Sophia accepted the coffee gratefully. It still feels surreal. Yesterday, I was analyzing budget reports for Morrison's department. Today, I'm reviewing acquisition strategies for companies worth hundreds of millions. And working directly with David Blackstone, Victoria added with a knowing smile, "Girl, do you have any idea how many people in this company would kill for your position?" The comment made Sophia's stomach flutter with anxiety. That's what worries me. People are going to think what they always think when someone moves up quickly, Victoria interrupted. But anyone who's worked with you knows you earned this. Your analyses were always the most thorough, your insights the sharpest. Morrison was an idiot for not recognizing your talent. As if summoned by his name, Richard Morrison appeared in Sophia's doorway. His face was flushed with barely controlled anger, and his eyes held a malice that made Sophia's skin crawl. Well, well. Look who's moved up in the world, he said, his voice dripping with false congeniality. I hope you're grateful for your opportunities. The way he emphasized the last word made his implication clear. Victoria stiffened beside Sophia, but before either woman could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Morrison. David's voice was ice cold as he appeared behind the older man. Is there something you need from my analyst? The transformation in Morrison's demeanor was instant. The sneer disappeared, replaced by an oily smile. Mr. Blackstone. I was just congratulating Sophia on her promotion. We'll miss her expertise in our department. I'm sure you will, David replied, his green eyes never leaving Morrison's face. In fact, I'm curious why such exceptional talent was underutilized for so long. Perhaps we should discuss your department's management practices sometime. Morrison's face went pale. Of course, sir. Anytime you'd like. I'll be in touch. The dismissal was clear. And Morrison scurried away like a rat fleeing a sinking ship. David turned to Sophia, his expression softening immediately. I hope he wasn't bothering you. Nothing? I can't handle, Sophia replied, though she was grateful for his intervention. The way David had defended her, the protective edge in his voice, sent warmth spreading through her chest. Victoria cleared her throat meaningfully. I should get back to work. Sophia, lunch later? After Victoria left, David stepped into Sophia's office and closed the door behind him. The simple action felt intimate in a way that made Sophia's pulse quicken. How are you really doing? He asked, moving to stand by her window. The transition has been quite dramatic. Sophia joined him at the window, careful to maintain a professional distance, even as every instinct urged her to move closer. It's overwhelming sometimes. It's the scope of the work, the responsibility, but also exhilarating. You're handling it perfectly, David said, turning to face her. Your analysis of the Henderson Group acquisition was brilliant. You identified risks that our entire legal team missed. The praise made Sophia glow with pride. I just try to think about what could go wrong from every angle. That's exactly the kind of thinking I need, David said, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. Sophia, I want you to know that I don't take chances on people lightly. When I moved you up here, it wasn't impulse. It was recognition. Intensity in his gaze made Sophia's breath catch. They were standing close enough that she could smell his cologne, could see the small scar above his left eyebrow that somehow made him even more attractive. David, she began, then stopped. She had been about to say something about professional boundaries, about the dangerous territory they were entering. But the words died in her throat as he stepped closer. I know this is complicated, he said. Softly, I know there are 100 reasons why we should keep this strictly professional, but... Sophia whispered. But I can't stop thinking about you, David admitted. About how you looked in that bathroom. So vulnerable, but so strong. About how your mind works. How you see patterns others miss. About how you make me feel like myself again instead of just the CEO. Sophia's heart was pounding so hard she was. Sure, he could hear it. David, we can't. The company policies, the power dynamic, I know, he said, reaching out to gently touch her arm. I know all the reasons this is impossible. But tell me you don't feel it too. Sophia closed her eyes, fighting against the pull she felt toward him. Feeling it and acting on it are two different things. Are they? David's thumb traced a small circle on her arm, sending electricity through her entire body. Sophia, look at me. She opened her eyes to find him studying her face with an intensity that took her breath away. I've spent my entire adult life being careful, being appropriate, being what everyone expected the CEO to be, he said. But with you, I want to be real. I want to be David, not just Mr. Blackstone. The first date that evening, David appeared at Sophia's office as she was preparing to leave. He had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, and the casual gesture made him look years younger. Have dinner with me, he said without preamble. Sophia looked up from her computer, her heart skipping. David, not as your boss, he interrupted. As David, as a man who's incredibly attracted to an amazing woman and wants to get to know her better. The honesty in his voice broke down her remaining resistance. Okay, she said softly. But somewhere private. I don't want to deal with gossip. David smiled, that transformation of his face that never failed to affect her. I know just the place. The restaurant he chose was small and intimate, tucked away in a part of the city Sophia had never explored. The lighting was soft, the tables far enough apart for private conversation. The menu was in languages she couldn't read. This is beautiful, Sophia said as they were seated at a corner table with a view of the city lights. It's owned by a friend of mine from college, David explained. Hey, we can talk freely here. As the evening progressed, Sophia discovered sides of David she had never imagined. Away from the corporate environment, he was funny, self-deprecating, and surprisingly vulnerable. He told her about the pressure of living up to his father's legacy, about the loneliness of being at the top, about his fear that people only saw his position and never him. What about you? He asked as they shared dessert. What did you dream about before all this? Before corporate America and quarterly reports? Sophia smiled, thinking back to her childhood. I wanted to be a teacher. Actually, math was always easy for me and I loved helping other kids understand it. But teaching doesn't pay enough to support a family. Do you regret it? Choosing money over passion? The question was more complex than he knew. Sometimes, but my parents sacrificed everything for me to have opportunities they never had. How could I waste that? David reached across the table and covered her hand with his. What if I told you that you could have both? That there are ways to make a difference and still be financially secure? What do you mean? Blackstone Industries has an educational foundation. You provide scholarships, fund schools in underserved communities, develop financial literacy programs. We need someone to head that division, someone who understands both the business side and the passion for education. Sophia stared at him. Are you offering me another job? I'm offering you a chance to follow your heart without sacrificing your security, David said, but not yet. I want you to master the financial side first, to understand how the money flows so you can make the greatest impact when you're ready. The thoughtfulness of it, the way he had listened to her dreams and found a way to make them possible, made Sophia's eyes fill with tears. Why are you doing this for me? She whispered. David's thumb stroked across her knuckles. Because you make me want to be better. Because you remind me why I'm in this position in the first place. To make a difference, not just to make money. Growing. Closer, the weeks that followed were a delicate dance of professional collaboration and growing personal connection. In the office, they maintained appropriate boundaries, but the tension between them was electric. Sophia would catch David watching her during meetings, his gaze lingering on her lips as she spoke. He would find excuses to brush against her as he passed her desk, his touch sending shivers through her body. Their work relationship flourished as well. Sophia's insights proved invaluable on project after project, and David began including her in high-level strategy meetings, where she was often the only woman and definitely the youngest person in the room. But her contributions were so sharp, her analysis so thorough that even the most skeptical executives began to respect her opinion. "You're becoming quite the power couple," Victoria observed one day, as they had lunch in the company cafeteria. "We're not a couple," Sophia protested, though the words felt hollow even to her. "Honey, the way that man looks at you could melt steel," Victoria laughed. "And the way you light up when he walks into a room isn't exactly subtle either." Sophia sighed. "It's complicated. The best things usually are. But Sophia, I've worked here for 8 years, and I've never seen David Blackstone look at anyone the way he looks at you. He's a good man, and he clearly cares about you." That evening, as if summoned by their conversation, David appeared at Sophia's office as she was working late on a market analysis. "Still here?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. "The Morrison Industries evaluation is due tomorrow," Sophia replied, not looking up from her screen. "I want to make sure it's perfect." David was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know, you don't have to prove yourself to me anymore. I already know how exceptional you are." Sophia finally looked at him, struck by the sincerity in his voice. "Sometimes I still can't believe this. It is real. 6 months ago, I was crying in a bathroom, convinced I was a failure. And now you're the most valuable analyst in the company," David said. "But more than that, you're the most genuine person I've ever met. You haven't let success change who you are." The compliment made Sophia's cheeks warm. "Success hasn't changed me because I still feel like I'm pretending sometimes. Like I'm wearing a costume that doesn't quite fit." David stood and moved around her desk, turning her chair so she faced him. "Sophia, look at me." She did, getting lost in those green eyes that seemed to see straight through to her soul. "You belong here," he said firmly. "Not because I put you here, but because you earned it. Your mind, your integrity, your compassion, that's what makes you valuable, not your position or your salary." He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "The way you make me feel that's real too, more real than anything I've experienced in years." Sophia leaned into his touch, her resolve crumbling. "David, what are we doing?" "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I don't want to stop this time." When he leaned down to kiss her, Sophia didn't pull away. Their lips met in a kiss that was tender at first, then deeper, more urgent. Sophia's hands found their way to his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart that matched her own. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "This changes everything," Sophia whispered. "Everything was already changed," David replied. "We're just finally being honest about it." The knock on Sophia's office door the next morning came from Daniel Wright, the head of human resources. A thin man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetually serious expression. Daniel had been with the company for over a decade and took his role as guardian of corporate policy very seriously. "Miss Chen, I need to speak with you privately," he said, his tone formal and concerning. Sophia's stomach dropped, but she maintained her composure. "Of course, please, have a seat." Daniel closed the door and settled into the chair across from her desk, opening a manila folder that made Sophia's palms sweat. "I've received some concerning reports about your relationship with Mr. Blackstone," he began without preamble. "Reports that suggest your professional relationship may have become inappropriate." Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. "Kind of reports? Observations of intimate behavior in the workplace? Extended private meetings? Dinner outside of work?" Daniel's eyes were cold behind his glasses. "Miss Chen, I need you to understand the serious nature of these allegations. If there's truth to them, could constitute a violation of company policy regarding relationships between supervisors and subordinates. Mr. Wright, Sophia began carefully. Mr. Blackstone and I work closely together on complex projects. If our professional collaboration has been misinterpreted, this isn't about professional collaboration. Daniel interrupted. This is about whether you've entered into a romantic relationship with your direct supervisor, potentially compromising your judgment and creating a hostile work environment for other employees. Sophia's mind raced. She thought about denying everything, but the memory of their kiss the night before made that impossible. The truth was written all over her face, and Daniel was experienced enough to read it. I need to ask you directly, Ms. Chen. Are you romantically involved with David Blackstone? The question hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. Sophia knew that her answer could destroy everything she had worked for, but she also couldn't bring herself to lie about something that had brought her more happiness than she had ever known. Mr. Wright, she said slowly, any personal feelings I may have developed are entirely separate from my professional performance. My work speaks for itself. That's not an answer, Ms. Chen? Before Sophia could respond, the office door opened, and David walked in. His expression darkened immediately when he saw Daniel. Right, what's going on here? Daniel stood, clearly uncomfortable with the CEO's sudden appearance. Mr. Blackstone, I was just conducting a routine inquiry into some reports we've received. What kind of reports? David's voice was dangerously quiet. Allegations of an inappropriate relationship between you and Ms. Chen, Daniel replied, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. David's jaw tightened. I see. And who made these allegations? That information is confidential, but the reports came from multiple sources within the company. Sophia knew without being told that Richard Morrison was behind this, how the vindictive manager had found his revenge at last. Mr. Wright, David said, moving to stand behind Sophia's chair in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. I want to make something very clear. Sophia Chen is the most talented analyst this company has seen in years. Her promotion was based entirely on merit, and her performance has exceeded every expectation. If anyone in this company has a problem with that, they can take it up with me directly. Sir, with respect, that doesn't address the concerns about my personal life. David's voice was sharp, because that's what we're really discussing here, isn't it? It's not Sophia's qualifications, not her performance, but my personal life. Company policy clearly states company policy serves the company's interests, David interrupted. And it's in the company's interest to retain exceptional talent, regardless of who that person may or may not be dating. The word dating hung in the air, David's indirect admission of their relationship. Sophia felt a mix of terror and relief the secret was out, but David was standing by her. Mr. Blackstone, Daniel said carefully, if you're confirming that you're in a romantic relationship with a direct subordinate, I'm required to inform the board of directors. Then inform them, David replied without hesitation. And while you're at it, inform them that I'll be restructuring Ms. Chen's position so that she reports directly to the board rather than to me. Problem solved. Sophia turned in her chair to stare at David in shock. He was willing to change the entire corporate structure to protect their relationship. Daniel looked equally stunned. Sir, that's unprecedented. Unprecedented situations call for unprecedented solutions. David said, now, unless you have specific concerns about Ms. Chen's work performance, I believe this conversation is over. After Daniel left, Sophia slumped in her chair, overwhelmed by what had just happened. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. David moved around her desk and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. Yes, I did. Sophia, I'm not going to let anyone destroy what we have because they can't understand it. But your reputation, the board will deal with it, David said firmly. I've made this company more profitable in 5 years than it was in the previous 20. They're not going to fire me over my choice in romantic partners. Sophia searched his face, seeing the determination there, but also the concern. What if they do? What if this ruins everything you've worked for? David stood and pulled her to her feet, wrapping his arms around her waist. Then we'll build something new together. But Sophia, I'm not losing you because of corporate politics and petty jealousy. The board meeting 3 days later, David faced the board of directors in the same conference room where Sophia had given her disastrous presentation months earlier. The 12-member board represented some of the most powerful business leaders in the country. Their collective wealth could have bought small nations. Sophia waited in David's office, pacing like a caged animal while her fate was decided. Victoria had come to provide moral support, bringing coffee and tissues that Sophia was too nervous to use. "He'll be fine," Victoria said for the 10th time. "David Blackstone doesn't back down from fights, especially when he's fighting for something important." "But what if they force him to choose between me and the company?" Sophia asked. "I can't let him sacrifice his life's work for me." "Honey, from what I've seen, you are his life's work now," Victoria replied gently. "The man is head over heels in love with you." The words made Sophia's heart race. Love. They hadn't said the word yet, hadn't dared to speak that truth aloud. But it hung between them in every glance, every touch, every moment they spent together. Meanwhile, in the boardroom, David faced the stern faces of the board members. Thomas Richardson, the chairman, and David's father's oldest friend, spoke first. "We've known you since you were a child. We've watched you transform this company into something your father could never have imagined. But this situation with Ms. Chen has created complications we need to address." "What complications?" David asked calmly. "Public perception," said Margaret Foster, one of the two women on the board. "If word gets out that the CEO is dating an employee he promoted, it could damage the company's reputation." "Could it?" David challenged. "Or could it demonstrate that our company promotes based on merit rather than politics? Sophia Chen has contributed more to our bottom line in 6 months than some departments do in years. No one is questioning her abilities," Richardson said. "But the appearance of impropriety is based on outdated assumptions about workplace relationships." "Damned," interrupted. "We're not talking about harassment or coercion. We're talking about two consenting adults who fell in love while working together." The admission silenced the room. David had just confirmed what they all suspected, but hearing him say the word love made it real, serious, permanent. "You're in love with her?" asked James Murphy, the youngest board member at 62. "Completely," David replied without hesitation, "and I intend to marry her." Another shocked silence followed. David himself seemed surprised by the words, as if he hadn't planned to say them but couldn't take them back now that they were spoken. David Richardson said slowly, "You're talking about marrying someone you've known for less than a year?" "I'm talking about marrying the woman who makes me a better man and a better CEO," David corrected. "The woman who sees solutions where others see problems, who brings out the best in everyone around her, who reminds me why this company exists in the first place." Margaret Foster leaned forward. "And what about Ms. Chen? How does she feel about being the subject of corporate gossip? In board meetings?" "She's scared," David admitted. "She's terrified that loving me will destroy everything she's worked for. But she's also the strongest person I know, and she'll face whatever comes because that's who she is." The board members exchanged glances, communicating in the silent language of longtime colleagues. "What are you proposing?" Richardson asked finally. "Restructure Sophia's position to report directly to the board, eliminating any direct supervisory relationship between us. Announce her promotion publicly, emphasizing her qualifications and contributions. And let me continue to run this company the way I always have, with integrity, intelligence, and the best interests of our shareholders at heart." "And if the relationship doesn't work out?" Murphy asked. David's expression hardened. "It will work out. But if it didn't, Sophia has proven herself valuable enough to retain regardless. This company would be foolish to lose her over personal drama." The declaration: after 3 hours of deliberation, the board reached their decision. They would support David's restructuring proposal, with the caveat that any future relationships between executives and subordinates would require board approval. It was a victory, but a costly one that put David's private life under permanent scrutiny. When David returned to his office, he found Sophia standing by the window, silhouetted against the city lights. She turned when she heard him enter, her face pale with anxiety. "Well?" she asked. David crossed the room in 3 quick strides and pulled her into his arms, spinning her around before setting her down and kissing her deeply. "We won," he said against her lips. "You're being promoted to Director of Strategic Analysis, reporting directly to the board." Sophia pulled back to stare at him. "A director? David, that's a senior executive position." "That's right." "With a salary." to match and stock options that will make you a millionaire within 5 years. David's smile was triumphant. No one can ever again say you're only here because of our relationship. But what about the board? What did they say about us? David's expression grew more serious. They gave us their blessing, but with conditions. Our relationship will be scrutinized, probably by the media as well as corporate gossip. Are you prepared for that? Sophia thought about what lay ahead. The whispers, the speculation, the constant judgment. Then she thought about how David had fought for her, how he had risked everything to protect what they had. "David," she said softly, "there's something I need to tell you." "What?" "I love you." The words came out in a rush, 3 simple syllables that changed everything. "Yeah. I love your mind, your integrity, your strength. I love how you make me feel like I can conquer the world. I love that you see me not as the girl from nowhere trying to make it, but as the woman I'm becoming." David's eyes filled with emotion. "Sophia, I'm not finished," she interrupted, placing a finger against his lips. "Hey, I love you enough to face whatever comes next. The gossip, the speculation, the pressure, bring it on, because what we have is worth fighting for." David caught her hand and kissed her palm. "Marry me," he said suddenly. Sophia's breath caught. "What? Marry me?" David repeated, dropping to one knee right there in his office. "I don't have a ring yet. I don't have a romantic setting, but I have love and commitment, and a future I want to share with only you." Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she looked down at this powerful man on his knees before her, offering her everything. "David Blackstone," she said through her tears, "are you proposing to me in your office?" "I'm proposing to you wherever you'll have me," he replied. "Office, bathroom, boardroom, I don't care where we are as long as you say yes." Sophia sank to her knees in front of him, framing his face with her hands. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to everything. Yes to marriage. Yes to facing the future together. Yes to loving you for the rest of my life." 6 months later, the wedding was small and elegant, held in David's family estate, with only close friends and family in attendance. Sophia wore her grandmother's pearl necklace and a dress that made her feel like a princess. While David couldn't stop smiling from the moment he saw her walking down the aisle, Victoria served as maid of honor, crying openly during the ceremony. Sophia's parents had flown in from their hometown. Her father, walking proudly after months of physical therapy, had restored most of his mobility. Her brother was there too, home from his first semester at Harvard, his tuition paid by the scholarship fund that Sophia now directed. Richard Morrison had been quietly let go from the company after an investigation revealed a pattern of discriminatory behavior toward female employees. Daniel Wright had also moved on to other opportunities, placed by someone more progressive in their thinking about workplace relationships. As Sophia and David exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through whatever challenges lay ahead, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. From that terrible day in the bathroom to this moment of perfect happiness, it had been a path marked by courage, determination, and the transformative power of love. "I love you, Mrs. Blackstone," David whispered as they shared their first kiss. "As husband and wife?" "I love you too, Mr. Blackstone," Sophia replied, her heart so full she thought it might burst. Later, as they danced under the stars to music that seemed to have been written just for them, Sophia reflected on how much her life had changed. She had started as a girl from nowhere with nothing but dreams and determination. Now she was a successful executive, a wife, and a woman who had learned that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as impossible odds. "What are you thinking about?" David asked, pulling her closer as they swayed to the music. "Bathroom encounters and how they can change your life," Sophia said with a laugh. David chuckled, remembering that day when everything began. "Best bathroom conversation I ever had." "The only bathroom conversation you ever had, I hope," Sophia teased. "The only one that mattered," David corrected, spinning her around before pulling her back into his arms. "The only one that led to forever." As the night wore on and their guests celebrated around them, Sophia and David held each other close, knowing that whatever challenges the future might bring, they would face them together. Their love story had begun with tears in a corporate bathroom, but it would continue with laughter, passion, and the unshakable knowledge that sometimes the most beautiful relationships bloom in the most unexpected places. The girl who had once cried alone in despair had become a woman who would never be alone again. And the man who had thought himself too powerful to be truly known had found someone who saw past his title to his heart. It was, as David had predicted that first day, the beginning of something extraordinary, the end.